Something is happening right now in the world of cold cases that has never happened before. The technology has finally caught up with the crimes. DNA profiles extracted from fingernail clippings preserved since 1977. Partial genetic profiles built into full family trees, traced across state lines, tracked down to a man living in a shack in Memphis. A missing teenager found alive, 32 years after she vanished without a trace. And one of history's most notorious serial killers, dead for 37 years, finally confirmed as a murderer in a case that had haunted a Utah family for half a century. It's 2026, and cold cases are being solved at a pace we've never seen. Today we're going to walk through 4 of the biggest breakthroughs from this year, and then we'll look at 3 famous cases where investigators are getting closer and closer and closer. Let's get into it. Part 1. Cases solved in 2026. Case 1. Christina Marie Plant, found alive after 32 years. We start with the one that doesn't end in tragedy, because sometimes, not often, but sometimes, the story ends the right way. It's May 15th, 1994, Star Valley, Arizona. A 13-year-old girl named Christina Marie Plant leaves her home on foot. She's going to visit her horse at a nearby stable. It's a short, ordinary trip. She's done it before. She never arrives. She never comes home. And for the next 32 years, Christina Marie Plant is listed as a missing child. The initial search was extensive. Local police, volunteers, regional resources, the works. Her name went into the National Missing Persons database. Flyers were distributed across Arizona and beyond. Nothing. Years passed. Decades passed. New investigators came in, reviewed the evidence, and hit the same wall. The Gila County Sheriff's Office kept the case open, but without leads, there was only so much anyone could do. Then came the Cold Case Unit, a dedicated team using what the Sheriff's Office describes as, quote, advances in technology, modern investigative methods, and detailed case review. New threads, new angles, and eventually, a breakthrough. On April 2nd, 2026, the Gila County Sheriff's Office announced that investigators had confirmed the identity of Christina Marie Plant.
After 32 years, a breakthrough. You see, the Gila County Sheriff's Office announces that Christina Marie Plant has been found and is alive.
She is alive. She is no longer listed as a missing person. Out of respect for her privacy, the Sheriff's Office has not released details about where she was found, what happened, or what the past 32 years looked like for her. And honestly, that's the right call. Whatever her story is, it's hers. What we can say is this. A 13-year-old disappeared in 1994. A 45-year-old woman got her name back in 2026. That is, by any measure, a remarkable outcome. Case 2. Laura Ann Aim. Ted Bundy confirmed by DNA, 51 years later. For most cold cases, the question is who. In this case, everyone already suspected who. The question was proof. Halloween night, 1974. Laura Ann Aim is 17 years old, from Utah County, Utah. She leaves a party to walk to a nearby store alone. She never arrives. A month later, her body is found alongside a highway. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered. Ted Bundy was living in Salt Lake City at the time. He was a law student at the University of Utah, and he had been killing women across the Pacific Northwest and Utah for months, though nobody knew it yet. When Bundy was eventually caught, convicted, and sitting on death row in Florida, he confessed to Laura Ann Aim's murder before his execution in 1989. He named her. He said he did it. But in the eyes of the law, the case remained officially unsolved, because a confession alone, without physical evidence tying him to the crime, is not enough to formally close a homicide. So for 51 years, Laura Aim's case sat in a strange limbo. Bundy had said he did it, but it wasn't official. Her family carried that with them. On April 2nd, 2026, at a press conference at the Utah County Sheriff's Office, that changed. A new DNA analysis definitively linked Ted Bundy to Laura Ann Ames's murder. The science confirmed what the confession had always indicated. "We felt the family's pain when she was taken from you. We have carried the same pain you have lived with all this time, and we have wanted to give you some form of relief." Sergeant Mike Reynolds, Utah County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Reynolds called Laura a, quote, prototype of a Utah daughter, and the sheriff's office called this what it was: a case closed, a family given answers, and a victim finally formally acknowledged. Bundy is believed to have killed more than 30 women. The night before his execution, he listed 30 names, but he also told investigators he thought the real number was somewhere between 35 and 37. The prison chaplain who was with him at the end said he believed Bundy himself didn't know how many people he had killed. Laura Ann Ames's case being closed doesn't end that accounting. It just adds one more confirmed answer to a list that is still probably incomplete. Case 3. The Houston Lovers Lane Murders, arrested 36 years later. August 22nd, 1990. Houston, Texas. Cheryl Henry is 22. Garland Atkinson, everyone called him Andy, is 21. They'd been dating for only a few weeks. They go out to a nightclub called Bayou Mamas, and afterward they drive to a secluded cul-de-sac near Enclave Parkway, a spot locals knew as Lover's Lane. Someone was waiting for them. Andy Atkinson was tied to a tree. His throat was slashed. Cheryl Henry was sexually assaulted and killed. Her body was hidden under wooden boards. And here's the detail that stuck with investigators for 3 decades. Golf balls from Andy's car had been deliberately arranged to point toward where Cheryl's body was concealed. That kind of staging, that kind of cruelty, this wasn't random. This was someone who wanted to be there. Houston PD, the FBI, and the Texas Attorney General's cold case unit worked this over the years. DNA from the crime scene was compared against more than 24 suspects. Every time, no match. The case went cold. Cheryl Henry's mother, Barbara Craig, died in 2024. Andy Atkinson's father also died in 2024. Neither of them lived to see what happened next. What happened next was a tip. A member of the public named Floyd William Parrott, 64, living in Lincoln, Nebraska. The name went to a Houston homicide sergeant who found a 1996 police report, a separate sexual assault case involving Parrott. That DNA profile had recently been uploaded to CODIS, the national DNA database, and when the lab ran the comparison, it came back match, case to case. On March 26, 2026, an FBI SWAT team arrested Floyd Parrott. He was charged with capital murder. Here's what investigators found when they dug into his background. In May 1988, and again in May 1990, just months before the Lover's Lane murders, Parrott had been arrested in Harris County for impersonating a peace officer. He drove a vehicle fitted with police lights and law enforcement-style gear. His work address was just over 1 mile from the crime scene. He was 28 years old when Cheryl and Andy were killed. Prosecutors have publicly stated they believe there may be more victims and are asking anyone with information to come forward. Cheryl Henry's sister, Shane, told reporters after the arrest, "I just never thought we would find him. I figured he was dead. So I'm very happy to know he's alive and will be held accountable." Shane Henry. Her mother never got to say that. Her mother spent the last years of her life without knowing. That's the weight of 36 years. Case 4. The murder of Ralph Gianoli. 49 years, 1 fingernail. This one might be the most technically remarkable case in this whole video, because the evidence that solved it was collected in 1977, and it worked. September 7th, 1977. Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ralph Gianoli is 48 years old, an auto worker. A friend goes to his home on 25th Avenue and finds him dead. The scene tells a story of a prolonged violent struggle. Blood spatter on the walls, broken bottles, overturned furniture, an electrical cord tied around Gianoli's neck. He had been strangled and beaten. Investigators collected everything: hairs, fibers, and crucially, scrapings from under Gianoli's fingernails. He had fought back. There was something under those nails. They preserved it all, and they worked the case until they couldn't anymore. Then it went cold. For 49 years, those fingernail scrapings sat in evidence storage. In 2013, 46 years after the murder, the Wisconsin State Crime Lab extracted a partial male DNA profile from those scrapings. Then they built a single nucleotide polymorphism file, a more precise genetic fingerprint, and uploaded it to a public DNA database. Investigators started building family trees. Branch by branch, generation by generation, they narrowed it down. The trail led to a man named James Terry Fowler, 68 years old, living in a shack behind a house in Memphis, Tennessee. In October 2024, detectives interviewed Fowler's ex-partner in Oregon, who described him as, quote, extremely violent and abusive. Then investigators approached Fowler's biological son, a man who had never met his father, and asked for a voluntary DNA sample. It matched. In January 2025, Tennessee investigators obtained DNA swabs from Fowler via search warrant. When detectives showed him a photograph of Ralph Gianoli and the crime scene, Fowler said he didn't want to look at the photo. He didn't want to talk about what happened. The Wisconsin State Crime Lab confirmed the DNA match, the probability of a random match, 1 in 296 trillion. But here's the layer to this story that makes it even harder to sit with. James Terry Fowler was not a stranger to violence. In 1983, he shot his own father, a man sitting in a wheelchair in Huntsville, Alabama. He was convicted of manslaughter, served 5 years, and was released. He spent decades drifting. People who knew him described a quiet loner who wandered the country. He had graduated from a naval base just miles from Kenosha, only days before Ralph Gianoli was killed. On March 30th, 2026, James Terry Fowler was arrested in Memphis and charged with first-degree murder. 49 years after those fingernail scrapings were collected. 49 years. Part 2. Cases that could break in 2026. Now let's shift from what's been solved to what's getting close. These are 3 of the most followed cold cases in America right now, and all 3 are seeing movement that hasn't existed before. We'll keep this tighter, but trust me, the updates are worth knowing. Jennifer Kesse, Orlando, Florida, vanished January 2006. Jennifer Kesse was 24 years old when she disappeared from Orlando on January 24, 2006. Her car was found nearby. A surveillance camera captured someone parking it, but the image was too blurry to make out a face. That grainy silhouette has been the central frustration of this case for 20 years. For most of that time, the case sat with the Orlando Police Department, where it largely stalled. Then, in December 2022, it transferred to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FDLE, and things started moving. In October 2025, Jennifer's father Drew told reporters that FDLE had conducted more than 115 interviews, reviewed tens of thousands of documents, and, most significantly, had narrowed the list of persons of interest down to just a few individuals they are, quote, working heavily on. No names have been made public. No arrests have been made. But Drew was clear that the family no longer considers this a cold case. In July 2025, FDLE revealed something that contradicted what the original investigators had said for years. There is DNA in this case that was never tested. Evidence sitting in storage for 2 decades that no one had run through modern forensic analysis. DNA technology has advanced from 19 markers to 26 markers since 2006. All of it is now being retested. And then there's the AI component. FDLE is working with what Drew described as a very reputable AI company to re-examine both the original surveillance footage and the entire 16,000-page case file. The focus is on the person of interest's ear, because an ear like a fingerprint is unique to a person. If the technology can resolve that image enough to make a match, it could change everything. Between DNA and AI, there's incredible hope right now to just crack the case. Drew Kesse, Jennifer's father. He's 68. He's fought 2 bouts of cancer. He hasn't slept a full night in 20 years. The investigators have told the family they truly believe they are going to solve it. We're watching closely. Missy Bevers, Midlothian, Texas, murdered April 2016. Terry Bevers, known as Missy, was a fitness instructor who arrived early at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas, on the morning of April 18, 2016, to set up for a class. Surveillance cameras inside the church captured a figure moving through the building in full tactical gear, helmet, body armor, everything. Missy Bevers was found dead. She had been struck with a sharp object. The footage is haunting. Everyone who has seen it agrees. The suspect walks with a distinctive gait. Police forensic analysts believe, based on the walk and body proportions, that the figure may be a woman, though this has never been confirmed. Nearly 10 years later, no arrest has been made. No suspect has been publicly named. But Midlothian PD insists, and the evidence backs them up, that this case has never gone cold. There is a former federal agent who devotes 20 hours a week exclusively to this case. A full-time detective is assigned. The case comes up in investigative staff meetings every single week. In August 2025, police told reporters that new tips, described as promising, were continuing to come in from both local and out-of-state sources. Investigators are now using AI and technology to re-examine the original evidence, though specifics haven't been disclosed. The unidentified vehicle from the night of the murder, a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima, still hasn't been traced. A $150,000 reward through Crime Stoppers remains active. Missy's husband Brandon has said publicly that he believes she was targeted, that someone came to that church that morning specifically for her. The why and the who are still out there. Asha Degree, Shelby, North Carolina, disappeared February 2000. This is the case with the most dramatic recent developments of any ongoing investigation in America right now. If you haven't been following the Asha Degree case, strap in because a lot has happened. Asha Degree was 9 years old. On the night of February 13th, into the early hours of February 14th, 2000, Valentine's Day, she left her home in Shelby, North Carolina, during a storm, and walked out onto Highway 18. Witnesses saw her. She turned back when a car slowed near her, then disappeared into the darkness. Her backpack was found buried a year later, 30 miles away, wrapped in plastic bags. For years, investigators had no named suspects and almost no public leads. Then, in September 2024, everything changed. The Cleveland County Sheriff's Office and the FBI executed 8 search warrants targeting properties connected to the Dedmon family of Cleveland County, North Carolina. For the first time in 24 years, actual suspects were named. Roy Lee Dedmon, now in his 80s, and his wife Connie Elliott Dedmon. Their 3 daughters, identified in the warrants as persons of interest, were teenagers at the time of Asha's disappearance. The DNA is significant. A hair found on Asha's undershirt inside the backpack was determined to be, in the words of investigators, genetically identical to the DNA of one of the Dedmon daughters. DNA from a second item was linked to a man named Russell Bradley Underhill, who lived in facilities run by the Dedmon family and died in 2004. Then there's the witness. A man named Tad Malentine voluntarily came to investigators and said that at a party in the mid-2000s, one of the Dedmon daughters had been, quote, sobbing and bawling while intoxicated, and made statements that he described as admitting to killing Asha Degree. He said he was 100% certain of what he heard. He passed a polygraph. And then there are the text messages. Investigators obtained iCloud data from one of the sisters, and what they found is striking. Messages between the sisters referencing the investigation. One message reading, "The theory is I did it. Accident. Covered it up." Another, "I don't remember that shirt. I'm scared though." And another one that investigators have highlighted, "I caused this." When one of the sisters was asked to take a polygraph in February 2025, she spent 45 minutes making phone calls before agreeing to sit down. The examiner found her deceptive. Since then, investigators have searched a Lincoln County property, an old school building that Roy Dedmon purchased in 1991 and sold in 2004, right across the window of Asha's disappearance. A green 1964 AMC Rambler, matching a vehicle of interest the FBI had been looking for, was seized from Dedman's property. And yet, as of April 2026, there have been no arrests. No charges have been filed. The Dedman family attorney has called the connections tenuous. But the reward in this case has been raised to $100,000, with the North Carolina governor himself contributing $25,000. Asha's parents are still out there, still speaking publicly. Her mother Akila told reporters this year, 26 years is a long time of not knowing. Asha Degree, Asha's mother. A detective told the family they are getting to the end of it. That's not a guarantee, but it's more than this case has had in a very long time. Here's what ties all of this together. A fingernail scraping from 1977. A hair stem tucked inside a backpack buried in 2001. A DNA profile from paper bags placed over a woman's hands in 1987. A partial image on a grainy security camera from 2006. None of this was solvable with the technology that existed when these crimes happened. Now it is. Genetic genealogy, AI-enhanced forensic imaging, advanced DNA profiling, and dedicated cold case units staffed by people who genuinely refuse to let these things go. That combination is doing something that seemed impossible for a long time. It's making the past answerable. Not always, not fast enough, and not without cost. Because some families, like Cheryl Henry's and Andy Atkinson's, waited their entire lives and never heard the answer. But the direction of travel is clear. Cases that were dormant for decades are moving. And in some cases, they're closing. That's the year 2026 in cold cases so far, and we're only in April. Of all the cases we covered today, which one do you think is closest to a full resolution? Is it Jennifer Kesse, where the DNA and AI work is finally happening? Is it Asha Degree, where investigators have named suspects and found what looks like physical evidence? Or is there something about Missy Bevers that makes you think that one is going to crack first? Drop it in the comments. And one more thing before you go. We talk a lot on this channel about technology solving cases that were once considered impossible. But here's a different angle. Is there a famous cold case you think technology will never be able to solve, where the evidence just isn't there anymore, and the window has probably closed for good? Let us know below.